Hey guys, welcome back to my channel where we educate you about home buying, mortgages, and real estate investing. Today's topic: the HOA treasurer bought a sports car with our dues. Let me tell you a story about an HOA treasurer who used our money to buy a sports car. Here we go. So this guy is the treasurer of my homeowners association, and he just bought a brand new bright red convertible. And the reason why it is such a big deal is because he didn't pay for it with his own money. He bought it with our money. How does a treasurer get away with taking people's money? Well, that's what we're going to discuss today. Before we get into it, if you like stories like this and you want to hear more stories like this, please hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I appreciate you guys for doing that. Also, here's one that I think you'll really enjoy. I'm going to link it down below. What happened was, the HOA sent out a notice to all of us in the neighborhood that said they were going to have a meeting, and at that meeting they were going to be discussing whether they should spend $200,000 to repave the roads. So some of the roads needed to be repaved in our little community, and this was the proposal. Now, there was also a footnote that said that any owner who lives within the community and wants to speak at that meeting needs to send in their name by a certain date, so that the HOA could notify the residents that someone will be speaking and to prepare for it. Well, the day before the meeting, I got a call from the HOA president, and he says, "Hey, you had signed up to speak at the meeting." And I said, "I did not sign up to speak at the meeting." And he says, "But your name is right here on the list." And I said, "Oh, okay." I thought it was kind of weird that the HOA president knew who everyone was that was going to speak at the meeting, but I didn't really think anything of it at the time. The next day comes around, we go to the meeting, and lo and behold, the only person that signs up to speak is the HOA treasurer. At the beginning of the meeting, the HOA president opens it up to the floor, and he says, "Does anyone want to speak? Does anyone want to talk about the proposal?" And the treasurer raises his hand, and he starts talking about how much he loves the roads in the community, and how it would be wonderful if they were all paved. And then he starts talking about all the great things that the HOA has done for him and his family since he has been here, and how much he appreciates it. And he ends his speech by saying that he fully supports the proposal. After his speech, there's no other discussion. All the other neighbors leave, and the meeting is over. Later that year, the HOA sends out a notice that says that they're having an emergency meeting, and the topic of the meeting is changing the reserve's emergency funds to the capital reserve fund. If you don't know what those are, basically what it means is that they're moving money from one place to another. They're taking money from the emergency fund and putting it into a capital fund, which means that they can use that money for capital improvements. So instead of saving it for emergencies, they're moving it to a capital projects fund. A few days later, I get an email from a neighbor who lives across the street, and he says, "Hey, do you know what's going on with this meeting? Why are they calling an emergency meeting?" And I said, "I don't know. I just got the notice yesterday. Do you know something about it?" And he says, "Yeah, I heard rumors that the HOA treasurer was taking a bunch of money out of the reserve account and putting it into the capital projects fund so he could use it to buy a sports car." And I thought that was hilarious. Now, keep in mind, this is just gossip. This is just rumors. I didn't believe him, but I wanted to find out what was going on, so I decided to do a little research. What I did is I went to the county records office, and I pulled up the HOA documents. And when I pulled up the HOA documents, I saw that the treasurer had signed something called a limited power of attorney, which gave him the ability to take money out of the HOA account and put it into his own account. It turns out that he took $200,000 out of the HOA account and put it into his personal account. And then he used that $200,000 to buy the sports car. So the question is, how does the HOA treasurer get away with taking people's money? Well, the answer is pretty simple. He forged the other board members' signatures. In order to take money out of the HOA account, you need two signatures. You need the HOA president's signature and the HOA treasurer's signature. But the HOA treasurer forged all the other board members' signatures so that he could take the money out and buy the sports car. Now, if you're wondering what happened to the guy, we had a board meeting last night, and we voted to remove him from his position as treasurer. We also voted to hire an attorney to look into this further, and we were going to pursue criminal charges against him. The reason why I'm telling you this story is because you need to be careful when you're dealing with people in positions of power. Just because someone is in a position of power doesn't mean that they're trustworthy. You need to be able to trust the people in charge of your money. And if you can't do that, then you need to take steps to protect yourself. For example, you might want to set up a system of checks and balances. This is a system where no one person has control over all the money. Instead, you have multiple people who oversee the money, and each person has a different level of access. For example, the treasurer might have access to the day-to-day transactions, but only the president and treasurer could approve larger purchases. You might also want to set up a system where someone else reconciles the bank statements each month. This way, there's someone else who is checking the transactions to make sure everything is correct. Another thing you can do is to rotate the treasurer's duties among the board members. This way, no one person has control over the money for too long. And also, you need to make sure that the people on the board are qualified to handle the job. This means that they need to have the necessary skills and experience. And also, you need to make sure that they're honest and trustworthy. You can do this by conducting background checks and also by asking for references. And lastly, you need to be proactive. Don't wait until something happens before you take action. Instead, take steps now to prevent problems from happening in the future. By following these tips, you can help ensure that the people who manage your HOA money are held accountable. If you're ever suspicious of someone's activity, don't hesitate to investigate. You might be surprised at what you find. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Also, please remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on any of our latest videos. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.